So thank you, Jens. It's a pleasure to be here. I'll provide an overview of the decentralization reform in Morocco in 10 to 15 minutes. So first, a few key dates, because that's important. State building is about legacy as well of institution over time. So without going into detail in everything that you see on the screen, I just wanted to highlight that the push for decentralization are related to key moments of state reform. First, at independence, obviously, with acknowledging municipalities as local power, as part of the governance of the country, but with limited responsibilities. In 1992, with the new constitution that was led by King Assander at the time, and most likely pushed by the democratic push for democracy, bottom-up push for democracy, and to mitigate the risk of further internal pressure, like happened in Algeria in parallel in the same period. And similarly, in 2011, the new constitution followed the Arab Spring and is likely a way to manage the democratic pressure for the king Mohammed VI at the time, and giving more power to municipalities, increased power, and also increased powers of region as elected bodies and not anymore as just an administrative layer. 2015 sees 3 organic laws that implement the 2011 constitution on regions, on provinces and prefectures, obviously with new powers, but also municipalities, and pushing de jure more power and responsibilities to those layers of administration. So state building, as I was saying, is a result of power at play, and decentralization is part of that. In the case of Morocco, what I propose is that decentralization to local government is a way to localize the democratic pressure without a major change in the governance of the country. The kings continue to play a major role in governance at central level, with de jure power, appointing head of government, appointing and revoking ministers, leading council of ministers, enacting law, head of the armed forces, dissolve parliaments. That's key de jure power. A strong soft power as well, symbolic, and that influence public life with public speech, with clear signal in public speeches, as well as recently the 2021 New Development Model report that set the horizon, was commissioned by the king and set the horizon for the development of the country for the next 15 years, and kind of imposed itself to elected government. And then there's also obviously the de facto influence of a nomination or else. So the elected government at the central government for 5 years, most of the time a coalition government by necessity, is really in between the king and local government. And you see that how it translates in terms of trust or engagement of citizens in election. Voter turnout tend to be higher in local election, 54% in 2015, compared to national election, 42% in 2016. I took the 2016 figures and not the latest one of 2021, because they were combined in 2021, so they were in the same time. So ultimately, they were about 52%, I think, or 56, I can't remember, because they combined local and national election, and that was kind of the plan. So looking at the previous one, showed that about 50-point difference in voter turnout, as well as in terms of trust in public institution, according to Arab Barometer data, the latest one. Institutions that are related or dependent of the king, indirectly or directly, like the army, the courts, or religious leaders, have very high trust, Local government and regional government are the right after, and the Prime Minister, Parliament, or the central government are the lowest performing in terms of trust in public institutions, around 20-25%, 20-30% of trust. So you have this system where a king with a high legitimacy and high power, legitimacy, trust, perceived trust by citizen, and local government as well, and in between the central government with very limited expressed trust, lower voter turnout, but with the financing and the legal power to implement policy. Next, I'll do a rapid review of decentralization. So here's a summary of what I will present later. My point is that legal government competence sharing is relatively clear. The financing of local government is limited. The PFM tools are in place, but the HR, human resource capacity of local government is limited. The deconcentration of line ministry is not implemented yet. And the regionalization reform adds a new layer to take into account in the decentralization. I'll show that in a few figures. In a word here, in terms of competence sharing, the regional level is in charge of the territorial development, the economic development of the region. That includes vocational training in it, as well as transport network. And maybe less usual here than you can see, the natural resource management and environment is also one of the key competences of the regional government. Municipalities, on their hand, are in charge of water and sanitation, urban transport, electricity and water distribution services, and social action and social, cultural and sport facilities. Quite a classic sharing of competencies here. What is maybe more surprising is the in terms of volume of capital expenditure for the latest data I have in 2016, that municipalities represent about 706 million compared to the $206 million of capital expenditure of regional government. This is likely due to the fact that we're only at the second mandate starting now of regional government. But that is something to keep in mind. In terms of financing of local government, that is quite limited. Local government, municipalities and regional government represent about 8% of total Morocco investment budget. And in terms of needs, that 8% is really covers about 10% of the needs. If we look at the example on a sample of urban municipalities' investment financing needs compared to what they actually finance, this is about 10-15%. And this trend has not especially evolved over the past few years. On the bright side, the public sector management tools are in place. Municipalities and regional government have strategies and development plans in place with annual investment project budgeting process, some level of partnership and agreement for regional government with the central state. So the tools exist. For municipalities, there's way more history and experience, so it's in place compared to a regional government where the tools are really new and have room for improvement. In terms of financial information management, the central government system, GIR, has been integrated management system, has been adapted to local government. So now all local government are connected to the national IFMIS system and process budgeting, accounting, internal control, procurement information through that. The revenue management model to manage local taxation is in deployment that exists, but is being increasingly deployed especially in urban municipalities. So that's a very positive side of current decentralization. In terms of financing, both for regional government and municipalities, there is a financing mechanism in place with some level of sharing, automatic sharing of some taxes to finance regional government and local government with different window of financing. Not all of them are implemented. So two funds, social funds and equalization fund for regional government are not implemented yet, but they exist de jure. And for municipalities, there's, I would say, two financing window. One is a central government transfer, which is allocated every year, but the allocation formula is pretty much unclear. Criteria exists, but no formula. So it's a negotiation every year and lacks predictability. And the local taxation system here, where there is a sharing between some are managed by central government, some are managed by the municipal level. They all represent about 56% of the financing of municipalities. So it's pretty clear, but it adds up a complete layer of complexity into the management of local taxation. In terms of capacity, the human resource capacity is another challenge for local government. There's inadequation between the mission and the capacity of the human resource, with some services overflowed with staff, while they are missing technical profile in some of the services, or for revenue collection, for example. And there is no really human resource management tools in place for local government to manage their own resources. Now, there is the good thing is that there is opportunity in the legal framework for local government, municipalities, and regional government to create and to manage a state-owned enterprise, or to form inter-municipality scheme that enable them potentially to attract higher profile on a contractual basis with higher pay, and be able to deliver. So there is some successful local development society or public work agency at municipal or regional level that are working well with the right profile. So, for example, the Casablanca Transport is one of the good example, or the Agadir, Grand Agadir inter-municipality scheme for transport. But those are exceptional good example. So the room for improvement in fiscal decentralization and autonomy, there is a wide diversity of performance between municipalities. One key proxy indicator for that is that 18 municipalities, all of them urban and large, collect 80% of local tax. So there is a big financial potential, fiscal potential for all of the local municipalities to collect more taxes. The regionalization reform, which is the recent impetus of the government, is yet to be implemented, to be fully transformative. The coherence between municipal planning and regional planning needs to be better articulated, to be fully implemented in synergies, as well as the regional government leadership in coordinating development and its capacity, technical, financial, and human, also would need to be developed. It's really basic for now. The challenge of the predictability and allocation of fiscal transfer to municipal government also would require some improvement. As I said, there is no official criteria, no formula established, so it's pretty unclear how it plays out for local government. And for regional government here, there's the two funds I was saying, the equalization fund that are not in place and could play a key role. A third one is also important one pillar is the deconcentration. So here the territorial footprint of line ministries and their role still needs to be determined. There was a 2018 charter for deconcentration that goes along and in parallel and coherent, purposely and supposedly with decentralization, changing the role of line ministry to be less of tutel, less of oversight, and more as a partner and support to local government. That is not effective, either not effective on the ground because
Abel, you have two free minutes to
I'm nearly done. Habits die hard in terms of behavior towards local government, or also there's just no presence of some line ministry on the ground. Yeah, the last two is local government and local SOE monitoring. Also would need to be improved. I won't go into details on that. I'll go directly to the conclusion here. Maybe is that devolution to municipal level is a reality in Morocco that could be strengthened. The PFM public finance management tools are in place. The level of financing balance between transfer and local tax is good, and the actual public sector capacity and service delivery is there, but could be strengthened. Now, the large discrepancies between local government and performance could be really improved. And the other key area is the regionalization reform. To translate from political will that has been clearly announced for the last decade to actual implementation, and that goes along with the deconcentration reform to regional and local level as well. And there's an opportunity here for Morocco to implement that further. I'll stop here. Thank you very much.